Carlsbro TC100. This is a late 60s one, I think, this one, judging by the writing and the markings on there. So these are quite rare now, don't see many of them about. There's plenty of the PAs about in this format, but there's not many, there really isn't many of these around. So let's have a quick look. So we've got a top cut on here, bass, treble, volume 2, and then we've got bass, treble, volume 1 for that channel there. So it's a couple of channels, and then we've got this top cut. Very simple amp. Let's swing it round and look at the back. So you can see we've got these symbols on here, and it's been used before in a band at some point. Not quite sure what that's about. We've just got speaker sockets there. See if we can just come down a bit. So we've got a speaker, just speaker sockets there. We've got impedance selector there for 3.5 down to 16 ohms. We've got 3.75, 7.5, 15 and 16 ohms. Fuse, that's been replaced, that's not original. And we've just got the main select there. You can see that just corresponds to this diagram here on there. Right, let's get the back off and just have a look inside it. 4 L34s, just looking at what those are. Pretty nondescript, nothing to write home about. Looks like it's still got the original primers in. I think these had primer tubes in, and they all still look original, those. Yep. Bit grubby inside, so we need to clean it out. Check out the transformers. Now there is a name for these transformers, and I can't remember what it is because very rare do you see these on amps, but the very early Carlsbros had these, where they're in like this framework. You can see if you've got two split windings there and another winding inside there, or a couple of windings by the look of it. So if anybody in the comments knows what type of transformers they are, I'll be grateful if they just left it in the comments what they are. I remember reading something about those, and it's just gone out my head. So the output transformer is the same, and you can see it protruding there behind the output tubes. And, ooh, best tighten him up. Let's have a look at the other one. Oh, he's nice and tight. So yes, he needs a coat of looking at, doesn't he? We've got the choke on there, you can just about see hiding away. Not much to see really, very basic amps these, but they are very nice sounding amplifiers. Right, let's get the chassis out and let's have a look at the gubbings. Right, so we're looking inside the chassis, and we'll use this because this amp hasn't been switched on for a good while. So we've got 50 plus 50 in series, 50 plus 50 at 350 volts working in series, and we've got the same here, so 3 lots of those 50 plus 50 in series. We've got another capacitor here, which is, can't quite see what that is, 8 microfarad. My word, that's a bit low. 8 microfarad. We've got a radio spares there that's been put in by Billy Bodger. And somebody's stacked. Not quite sure what's. Oh yeah, I see how that's been done. Yeah. So those 220Ks, that has been changed at some point. And that is 50 microfarads. Not quite sure what that's. Oh, it's for the bias. Yep, so that's for the bias, so that's been changed. Yep, negative on there. It's a bit crude. we've got 100 nanofarad or 0.1s for the coupling caps to the output tubes, hence we've got 4. These have been changed at some time, I think. Yep, and this one's been changed as well, so I'll have to see if they're the correct value. So a fair bit of work being done on this amp. What else? We go across, so there's some work been done here. But that does need a coat of looking at. It's okay, but it's a bit cold. So the solder joint. Anything else that's been worked on? Screen resistor leaning on the chassis there, but they're the original ones, I think, RS by the look of them. That the one pushed down there, but it's okay though. You see some soldering's been done around here at some time. So maybe this board's been out, I don't know. That's been changed there. That's been soldered there at some times. You can see the solder here and it's spilled out up onto the resistor there. Nothing major. You can see there've been a lot of soldering gone on here. You can actually see the spitting of the solder all over the board there. So there's been a fair bit of soldering going on. But nothing major, is there really? There's nothing that stands out is particularly bad. It's just, yeah, it's all no dry joints, anything. That looks like it's cracking a little on there. We'll address that. Just give it a reflow. It's a bit, this amp's pushing 60 years old. Yeah. So what sort of condition are these caps in? So I'm just looking. There's a lot of solder there. Just dropped down onto there. They look surprisingly in good order. The Hunt's capacitors in this one, as opposed to those Erie ones, or I can't remember how they're pronounced now, but they're the usual ones. The same colour though, but different caps. So they look okay at a glance. What's going on there? Anything? No. So yeah, all looks pretty good. So this is in for a check over really. It runs okay. It's just in for a bit of a check over. To be fair, at the age of those caps, you'd expect those to be in pretty poor state, but they're actually not. Actually in pretty good state considering. Let's just check these resistors here. $252, so that's a bit over. $220. Try this one. $253, so they're a little over. They're not sold very well, but apart from that, that's really the only thing I can see that's a bit, you know, iffy really. We check the bias on it. So this 8 microfarad, let's see what this is smoothing. 8 microfarads, not a lot, is it? It's actually 8 plus 8. 8 plus 8, so that, one side of that will be smoothing the phase. We could increase that. I think on the slightly later models, that's 20 microfarad as opposed to 8. Little low, that is. Not the greatest of smoothing. This RS cap, you can't see that on there, that doesn't look very healthy. 50 microfarads on the bias as well, so yes, I think we'll be changing him. He's looking a bit grubby on the end there. I think there's gumption coming out of his loins, so we'll change that. Just have a bit of a, probably just a bit of a clean up on this board. It needs cleaning anyway, so we'll just clean that flux off while we're at it, and then we'll look at this cap here at least. So this belongs to the shop, so I'll give Lee a ring and just see what he wants to do with this. But that cap's a bit low. That cap's done. So we'll check these coupling caps. We'll see if there's any problems with those. Check the other coupling caps. These Mullard mustard capacitors, though, they seldom leak. They're very good caps, as most of you will know if you've got your head in these, you know, at these older amps. Pretty darn good. Bit of a dirty socket there, but nothing, again, nothing major. -37 on there. Not that that means anything, but if it's quite low, then gives me some indication that the bias is quite high. Now this amp as well, I've still got the original bulging plug there, and the fuse is also wired on the negative side, and as it was on most amps in those days, certainly all these amps. So, and someone's fitted this fuse socket, made a really good job of it. They put, you know, they put some thread lock in there as well with it, made a good job. But it would have been better if it had been wired on the positive side. Little bit of frying here and there, but that I kind of get the impression that's a plate resistor. It's a lot of heat being generated from these tubes though. So a check of the bias may be needed. Let's just see what HT voltage we've got on there. 454. 455. 457. $233. See what we've got the other side of that. 354. So that's probably smoothing the phase inverter. So again, we've just got that bit of frying. Might be a tube socket, might be a plate resistor, and we've got the carbon comps in there. Right, so most of the things I can see wrong with this amp at the minute then is the frying. We've got this capacitor here is shot on the bias. This one seems okay, but 8 microfarad seems a bit low to me for smoothing the phase inverter and the preamp tubes for an amp this size anyway. So that could be up to 22. These seem absolutely fine, the main caps, and the fuses on the negative rail. Right, I've had a bit of a check round, and we do have some one or two other things I have spotted since our last look in here. So if we look, try and go in and zoom in, there's a couple of resistors here. You can see they are look like the plate resistors, and that's very grubby. Trying to look and see if that's actually been burnt or not, but it's very grabby, that is. So that they may well need to be changed. That frying is just on this channel. Turn this channel down, turn that one up. No frying on there. So that frying is on this second channel. So it may well be a plate resistor. So I need to find a schematic and just check these plate resistors on the phase inverter. They look a bit sick to me. There's a lot of flux around there. It's like somebody's been soldering around there, made a lot of flux, and I don't quite know how that resistor's ended up like that. I'm sure a lot of flux around here, so there's a bit of work to do. Right, let's check the bias. So what we'll do is we'll switch off. Just make sure the capacitors have drained before we start delving in here. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay, nothing's holding any voltage. 5 volts, that's nothing. Yep, that's good. Always check the capacitors are drained. Remember, if you do it right, you won't get a bite. Right, so I've done all the measurements to get the figures for the bias. So I measured the left side of the transformer, which is these two tubes here. We've got 19.1 ohms, and I've measured the right side, and that is 21.7. These two tubes here. The volts drop across the left side is 0.8. The volts drop across this side is... Try that again. That was a ejector going over. If you heard that, you probably did. Certainly stopped me in my tracks. In fact, that's proper stopped me in my tracks. Let's start again, shall we? So, measured the transformer on the left side, 19.1. Measured the transformer on the right side, 21.7. Measured the volts drop on the left side is 0.8. Measured the volts drop on the right side is a 1.9 volts drop, and the plate voltage is 458 volts. So I've got a feeling that bias is going to be a little bit off on one side. That's a considerable difference, 0.8 and 1.9. So let's do the left side first and see what we've got there. So we have 19.1. Sorry, we don't. We have 0.8. So divided by 19.1. That's 41 milliamps. Divide that by 2 because we've got a couple of tubes. That's 20 milliamps times 458. That's 9 watts. So they're a bit low on that side, which we'd expect, wouldn't we, with 0.8 volts. So we'll call that 9.6, 9.59, 9.6 watts. So let's try the other side. So the other side's got a 1.9 volt drop. We divide that by 21.7. That gives us 87.5 milliamps. Divide that by 2. Yes, as we thought, 43 milliamps a tube. And if we times that by 458, we've got 20 watts. So the right side is dissipated at 20 watts, should be 17.5, and the left side is only 9.6 watts. So these two tubes are dissipating quite a bit compared to these two. So that will either be these two just drawing more current. We could try switching one over, or we could find that the coupling caps are just a bit leaky. So that needs addressing. We can't leave that like that, can we? That's quite high on that side, quite low on the other. So there's another problem we need to look into. So let's just have a bit of a sum up then, what we found on this amp, what problems. So this cap's shot. These caps seem okay. The fuser's wired on the negative side, which we need to bring that up to modern day standards, although we've still got the bulging plug on there, bulging socket. This cap's okay, but it's only 8 microfarad a side, and I mean, not long after this was made, the next version was up to 22. So, or 20 it was, but it'd be 22 now. So we could do it just changing that, really, just to just to make it perform a bit better. We've got this frying on there, you can hear that's going with merriment, and I've got a feeling that's plate resistors, so which will be these here, and I might just change them all. There's two more there. It actually might be those two. I'll have to just check on the schematic which. Just having a quick, can I just see quickly on the wiring? Got pink coming off there. What else we got? Pink coming off there, and we've got black coming off there into there. I've got a red coming off there, yeah, so from there to there. So looking very much like that each channel is using 1/2 of that 12AX7 there, so it'll be one of these two plate resistors more than likely. But well, seeing as two of them are in the same thing there, because obviously that's where they get the feed from, the same eyelet, we'll just swap them both while we're doing it. End of problem. In fact, there's two more here. In fact, someone's had a bit of a go at those. I might swap those as well. And then these resistors here are looking dreadful, so we need to probably swap those. These grid leaks are a little high in value. We need to check around at some more resistors. But that definitely needs changing. That's on the bias, and we've already got bias problems. Obviously we've got this massive imbalance of bias. We've got 20 watts on this side, and we've got 9 watts on that side, so there's some issues with this amp we need to get sorted. We're going to recap this amp completely. So these, I've spoke to Lee at the shop. This is his amp. I'm going to remove these, change them, remove this. Right, we've removed all the capacitors, and we've removed all these components, and some work had been done in this area before and they'd left the flux on, so I've had to get all that flux off and clean up these. In fact, I left a bit of solder in that one, but I've had to clean up all these eyelets. Now the other thing to watch if you are working on one of these type of boards, tends to differ from such as working on a lot of Fender boards. There's wires underneath this board linking from place to place, and there's quite a lot of wires underneath these, so you have to be careful when you're taking these components out, pushing the new ones, and you don't push the wires out. So for instance, I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I just bring up my meter, and we'll just pop him in there so you can see him. We only have to see like so, so we can see. So here is where positive from the diodes. This will be the B plus coming in here from that bridge rectifier, and I've removed all the diodes. So at some point those diodes have got to connect to the center tap of the transformer, for example. So if what I do here, and they've actually used pin 6 to connect the center tap and all the feeds for the B plus on there. So if I put the meter on there, and you can just see there, what that does is that's telling me that that's connected from there to there, because you can see the wire there. Now when you've put all this together, that you need to test this to make sure that you have got that connection there. And one of the reasons I do that is it's like working as you go along. So as soon as you've finished that and wired it all up, first thing you do is check it, because if it's not connected, then you've got a problem. If you keep going through these eyelet boards fitting things, and then you run the amp up and it doesn't work, then you're chasing your tail, because you might push that wire out, you might have pushed another wire out. You could have 4 of those out of there, and then you've got a whole world of problems trying to trace them. If you go through your work as you do it and make sure it's all connected properly, then you're going to have less problems when you come to fire the amp up. And if we look at this one, you can see again, we just bring the meter in a bit closer now. So this is to ground there, and you could on that one there, yep. See, that's to ground now. Got continuity there, and that is that'll be the ground for these middle capacitors, but it will also be the ground for the bridge rectifier there. Right, so I've done a bit more work on this Carlsbro, and you can see we've got the caps in here. So I've done a few things. So we had no balancing resistors on the previous ones, so we've got those fitted there, and I've had to use these carbon films because they were the only resistors I got with long enough leads to actually go across there. All the others just wouldn't reach around the capacitors, and there's really nowhere, wherever I put them, they've got to go around the length of the capacitor. So we've got those done. Now, because these resistors are running across the top, I was going to put a tie wrap around these to hold them, but it's a bit concerned the tie wrap was actually touching the resistors, so should there be a dead short on this amp, one of those should burn up, then I've left plastic underneath it. There's potential for those to it's rare, but it's there. There's potential for that to catch fire. You just shouldn't leave plastic near these resistors that are carrying high voltage. Well, I don't think you should anyway. So what I've done is I've used some hookup wire, and I've wrapped the hookup wire around these brackets, and I've twisted them up tight, and then what I've done is soldered each one, and they're absolutely brilliant. The caps are solid in there now, so they've worked fantastic, and we can go down and have a bit of a closer look at those. So you can see how those have been done. So you can see we're working in this area now. One of these resistors has already just crumbled away, and you can see how all this lot's just been packed into there, and see, look at that resistor there. So we've already replaced these, not soldered up yet, but they're replaced. We're going to remove this whole thing out of here now. Right, we've got a bit more of it done. So we've got the bias cap in there, and we've got the 47k resistor. You can't see it, it's under there. Now, again, you saw the state of these resistors, so you can see what I've actually done here. So I've got the 410k grid stoppers. So there's the two 220ks there, and that one going out to this tube, that one's going out to this tube, and then what I've done with these, I've stood them up, brought the cables down there from the leads, sorry, from there, and that's going to the outer tubes there. You see how I've done that. You can see we've got space under there. So I've lifted these up. What I didn't want is those leads touching these resistors at the bottom, because when I started soldering there, the heat would have gone across them and burnt them. So I've stood them all up. That's much neater than it was before. Coupling caps are in there now. We've still got some work to do here, and it's all starting to look good now. Now I'm turning my attention to these plate resistors on the as well. I've just got a capacitor to go across there, and they can be soldered up, which is the 50 picofarad, which we need to replace, that goes across the phase inverter for oscillation purposes, or lack of oscillation, because we don't want any. These two resistors here in this horrendous cold solder joint, and this is completely, I don't know what's on that. That I think is 100k according to the schematic. So let's see if we can hone in with the meter quickly there. So if I test on there and look at that for Sod's Law, that resistor looks absolutely shot, and it measures almost exact, but I'm afraid it's got to come out because of the state of it. And the other one should be 91k, so let's measure. The other one looks in better condition, so let's measure this one, and that's 102.6k. so that's definitely got to be changed, even if they looked really good. that's got to be changed, because there's a reason why they're 10% difference, and obviously that's now, you've got even more, that's gone up to 102, which is more than the 100. So we need, those need to go anyway. In fact, an 82k would go in there. You see, I've seen both in these amps, seen 82s and 91s. Don't know whether I've got a 91. It's a bit of a strange value, isn't it, 91? So we might end up putting an 82 in there, and that would probably be all right with that. Done a bit more. So this whole section is now rebuilt. This is the resistor for the feedback, negative feedback. Yeah, you can see where that's going there. Now I had to lift one leg of that to test it, and it was a couple of K over. But I already took one leg out, so I just replaced the resistor. It was easy to do it. These two caps tested perfectly. These 2 0.1s, 4.7k, which is on the phase inverter on the tail. That was 5.3, so I've changed that. The 10k I changed anyway again, because I took that end out and I'd also took this one out. These two 1 megs were way over, so I've changed those. And 100k plate resistor, and the 82k didn't have a 91, but most of these type of phase inverters have 82 in, so if you put that in, there's a 1k here on the phase inverter that measured 1.5k, so he's been changed. And there just isn't a straight resistor in this thing, and the ones that are I've just changed anyway, because for instance these 410ks on the grid stoppers, they all tested accurate, but again by the time I've lifted out one end, and I might as well just change them and have new ones in and just have done with. I've changed this resistor, sorry, this capacitor on here, this 50 picofarad. So we've got a Vichy on there. We've got a bit of insulation on there because that was a bit close for me. So I've insulated that. So now we've worked our way through this amp. And this is the point where we're up to now. This 100 nanofarad 0.1 microfarad. This is the coupling cap that goes into the grid of the phase inverter there from the other stages. So now we get into the point of the amp where we're going to be doing some mods on this. So what I want to do is split these cathodes first of all. So what they've done here, they've got this, they've got these shared cathodes here, and if we look at this cathode resistor, you can see here, this, just go in there, you can see the 1 meg, sorry, you can see the 1k, and you can see the, I think that's a 64 microfarad or something. Yeah, 64. That's a weird value. That's the bypass capacitor. So if we follow this wire through here down onto this tube bay, you can see that it goes right across to the other cathode. So they're sharing that, and I've looked on the schematic. I have found a schematic for this amp now, by the way. I've looked on the schematic as well, but you can physically see there that you can see without question they're sharing those cathode resistors. So I want to split that and have a separate cathode resistor on them. This one the same. If we look at this one and we follow it through down, we can see the cathodes joined there. Right, so we're going to look at this schematic now, and I actually said this was a TC100. It's a CS100. All these slope front ones were CS. CS100BTC is the exact model of this amp. So now, we've sorted out the phase inverter, we're now on to this section, these preamp sections, and 47 coming out that first stage there, and then if we look at this channel, we've got the same 47 coming out of there, and then we've got the tone stack here. So let's have a look at this tone stack. So a bit different to what we normally see in tone stacks. So if we think of some of the fenders where the tone stacks after the first stage, we'd have no coupling cap there. So we'd have DC going into the 500 pico, which is then decoupling it to the tone control. We'd have this slope resistor here. The DC would be going down the slope resistor. It would then go that way and get blocked out here, and then we'd also have another cap on there blocking it out from the base control. And then we've got the 10k mid resistor there. So let's look back in the amp now and see where we are. I've just got this handheld, so which I don't often do now. There's the coupling capacitor, there's the slope resistor, there's the 500 pico. So let's look at the schematic on there. So there's our coupling capacitor, there's our 47k slope resistor, and there, so you can see there, that's where they're connected together. Coming out the plate, you can see 47 nanofarad, and you can see both of those connected there. We've got slope resistor and 500 picofarad. Now this second channel, I've had a bit of a rethink on it. So I've decided I'm going to do a bit of a guitologist on this amp. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the coupling cap there, but I'm going to change it to this 10 nanofarad ceramic. And I've seen him do this quite a lot with these ceramics. He really likes them, says they give him a different sound. So I'm going to try that. So we'll call this the Guitologist channel. I really do like his channel. I find it very entertaining. When he's on song, he's quite funny and very dry, and he does some entertaining stuff. You don't get 145 subscribers for nothing. So yeah, so I'm going to change that when I put 10 nanofarad in there. I'm going to change the plate resistor there to 220k. I'm also going to change the plate resistor on the second stage to 220k. That's going to give us more gain. Change that coupling cap, and we're going to have a look at this tone stack. Now what I might do with this tone stack is change this to 22 nanofarad. Second, the coupling capacitor, the cathode bypass caps. Cathode bypass caps, I think we'll go 820 on there. We'll just bring that down, just try and bias that stage a little bit hotter. And then the second stage bypass cap, let's have a look at that and see what we can do with that. We'll come up with some ideas. So we'll just be a bit more creative on this second channel. Right, so we built these mods into these channels. So channel 1, the pink wire on here, which is the pin 2 on this 12AX7. This is the channel where we copied from the Fender schematic. So we've got our 1.5k cathode resistor and bypass cap, which we've shared down to the second stage of that first channel. We have 100k plate resistor. We've got the jumper in there now. We've got the 250 picofarad blocking DC to the treble control. Got the slope resistor 100k DC going from there, being blocked with this capacitor going to one side of the base pot, and then we've got this one here blocking the other side. 6.8k mid resistor, that was 10k before, and that's built that channel up there, at least the first stage. So I've decided, I've just gone ahead with this what I calling the Guitologist channel, because we're using these ceramics, which is a favourite of his. So we've got 220k plate resistor this time instead of 100. We've got 10 nanofarad ceramic Vichy. And go on to there now. We've blocked the DC from here like the original tone stack. We've got 200 picofarad going for the tone. We have a 62k slope resistor in this one. We need a 22k here, but I've done that in ceramics. I put two in parallel for 2 of the 10s, so that's 20. Well, it's 20 actually in there. So that's, we've pretty much built that up, and the the mid resistor is 10k as it was before. It's just been changed for a metal film. So what's left to do now on this board is we need the cathode resistor for this first stage and second stage. We need to change the plate resistors of the second stages, and we need to check this 330k. We'll probably just take them out now, and I've done with, and there's a 470 under there, so they'll be coming out. Those I've decided I'm not going to mod those as of yet anyway. I'm just going to leave them as is. Right, so that's built both those channels now. They're both built up. We've got a few more bits to do, but we're going to take this board out now. And the reason we're going to do that is we're going to check it underneath. I could have took this board out and worked on it and kept lifting it up and checking. But a lot of the stuff that I do on the channel, it's to demonstrate things. Remember, part of this is entertainment and finding what works and what doesn't work. Just because I know what works and doesn't work, you know, some of you that are following the channel, and I know a lot of people have said to me, you know, they're learning quite a bit. So this is a reason why I've done this with the boarding. We're going to take this board out and we're going to have a look at the state of it after I've completely soldered it all. This amount of work on a board, I would never just think, right, I'm not going to bother taking that out, because you know, you cannot see what's underneath there, and we could even have a dead short on there. I don't think we have, but I think it's not good enough, is it, when you're switching something on? So we need to be sure. We also need to make sure there's nothing that's, you know, not connected up properly. Remember that when we're pushing these resistors down into these eyelets, any wires that are coming up, technically we're pushing them back. So we could find one of those wires is just hanging on by a thread. But we're going to have a look at what state that board will be in underneath after doing all this work. We've got this board out, as I said we were going to do, and we're going to just have a look underneath now and see why you should take these boards out while you're working on them. As I said, I purposely didn't on this, because this is to demonstrate why you should. So if we lift the board, and now we look, and if we look under here, so if we go over here first, you could see the wires there, not great. That one isn't soldered, so we don't really count that one. If we go across, yes, that's not bad. One or two bits in this need trimming, and if we look here, it's soldered well, but you see how it's run down there. If we look, some of these joints just need touching up. That one's not got a great deal, although it's plenty of solder on the top of the eyelet. Got a wire here that's just drifted out a bit, no big deal there particularly. And if you look there, that needs addressing. There you can see. So you can see, and it's not as, but to be fair, it's not as bad as I expected it to be, but it's still not great. Bit of a cold solder there, and so on. So just a general tidy up. Where are we now with this amp then? We've got the board back in. We checked all the solder joints. We've got everything back in this amp now. Everything's wired back up, except for the B plus, the HT voltage. B plus voltage isn't wired in yet. I've changed the resistors on the input sockets to metal film, so there's no carbon comp resistors in this amp. If you're a carbon comp resistor fan, then I'm very sorry, but in this project this is what we're doing. We're using the metal films. So we're looking at setting this bias voltage up for this amp now, and I want to put in a trimpot. So let's just have a look at what we've got. So we've got a 47k resistor here and a 50 microfarad cap smoothing it there. Very simple bias. If we look here, we've got, there's our diode for the bias, and we've got a 22k resistor before it. So this is the AC feed coming out the transformer. Got a 22k resistor there, and that controls how much voltage flow you get through this circuit. Right, you can see the meter there. It says -31 on that meter. Now I've got this amp set at 120 volts, so that's actually -62, which is really high. The tubes will be stone cold with that amount of negative volts on there. There's the B plus isn't connected up on this amp, so it's as if it's in standby. So there's no tubes in it at all. So there's no B plus. We're just working purely off this bias voltage. So at 120 volts, which I've got running on the variac, we've got 31, and that's just set this back because it's creeping above. So we've got 120 volts, we've got 31. So we're going to have 62 negative volts there on the grids of the tubes, which will make them run stone cold. Now to get that extra negative volts, I've reduced the 22k that we saw before the diode that's adjusting the AC voltage coming in. I have dropped that to 5.6k. So now what I want to do is wire in parallel across that 47k resistor that we've got in the bias circuit. So, but what values will I need across that? Well, I've got a 22k pot, so I'm going to put the pot on, and now the pot's wired in parallel. Now the pot's now turned I've just turned the pot, give the meter a minute to set. So now the pot's turned all the way down, and we've got -20, which will be -40 volts. Now as I start to turn that up, I'll turn it full up. Now we don't have any bias on the tubes because the pot now is full up, and it's probably around somewhere like 1 ohms now, something, and that paralleled across that 47k will equal no negative volts. So that's not going to work, because that's the last thing we need to do. Somebody turns that, there's no bias on it. So let's take a 10k resistor and put it in series with that pot. We've now got 32k. So let's put that on there. Let's turn it to its coldest point. So that's with the pot turned at its coldest point. So the tubes will be running at the coolest. We've got -22.4. So double that. Remember, we're only set at 120 volts on the mains. So double that. That's nearly -45. Let's turn the pot to its hottest. Now we've got -14, which is -28 at 240 volts. Now the tubes will be running hot at that, but they would still run. It wouldn't burn them up straight away. You'd notice that it was running hot or whatever. So if someone fool came in here and just wound that up, or didn't know what they were doing, the tubes aren't immediately going to just fry. They probably wouldn't do much good over time, but that's how most bias trim pots are set up on amps. So we're looking for a window. So not that it by any means is the way to set the bias, but according to the schematic, oh, it's negative, the bias should be negative 33 on these tubes. So if we start to go cooler, now we've got negative 30 volts. So we go there. So now we've gone a bit over that. As this pot's it takes it a minute to settle. Say this meter's not fantastic, and you have to persevere with it, but it's very good on the camera, which is why I use it. So now we've virtually got negative 36 there. So we come down, just go a little hotter. Now we've got negative 34 there. So go down, and now we're coming down to 16.5. which is near enough, that's as good as negative 33. So we can get that window that's on the schematic. That's not forced to be correct for the set of tubes we put in it, but that has got us in a window where we want to be. Now, what happens if the pot fails? Well, if the pot fails, it's failed. And now we're back to negative 60 volts, because now we're just running on the original 47k, because nothing's in parallel with it. So that prevents, if the pot fails, the tube's just shut down at negative 60 volts, and the amp suddenly starts to sound pretty awful. And then obviously there's an indication that there is a problem with this amp, but it won't damage the tubes. Right, there we go, fitted. So we've got it mounted on this bracket. 2 M4 bolts, the star washers on the back, on the bottom there, he's solid. We've got our 10k resistor here, wired across this side of the pot and the wiper, and then we've got the return back to the other side of the resistor or capacitor, because the resistor's underneath, and we're away to go with that. Now let's just look at the meter. So you can see there on the meter I've got 240 volts going through this now. You can see it's maxed out at its coolest, negative 43. Remember, it said 33 on the schematic, so we should have plenty of scope there. And if we go, see, I'm gradually turning that now. I would guess that schematic recommends that negative 33 based on what manufacturer of tubes they put in, because they all vary. It wouldn't do for the Russian ones. You can see I'm bringing that down. It's a little sensitive, but they generally are. But there we go, we're near enough negative 33, and if it's at the hottest point, we've got negative 27.8, almost negative 29. So I think we'll be fine with that. If the pot fails, we go up to negative 60, and the tubes are saved, and the amp will obviously not run very well with negative 60, which will then indicate to the user that something is wrong with it. His tubes don't get damaged, he switches off, and it goes to a tech to find out what's wrong, and if it is the pot that's failed, obviously then new pot's put in. Simple as that. So because we're waiting for this part here, this new bugging IEC that's coming, I'm going to delay wiring this up properly, and I'm going to wire this up temporary, obviously safe but temporary. We also need to put that resistor in properly there, because it's only tacked in, but that's just for the bias, so we'll get that done. And the reason I'm going to wire this up temporary is because we need to put another fuse in this for the HT. Where do we mount that fuse? Well, the logic dictates using this fuse holder, disconnecting the mains from it, and using this fuse holder, and then drilling another hole there and putting the mains fuse there. The reason for that is quite easy really, is that this is all AC in this corner, so it makes sense to have the mains fuse with all the AC. Here we've got more DC around this area, so it makes sense to have the HT fuse there. Also, the HT fuse connects here, so that wire is only that distance there, and the feed into the B plus from to the fuse will simply just come around here, and we can take that around there, keep it away from the AC up to the DC there. And so that makes total sense to do that. So for the time being, I'm just going to wire this round here, and then I'm going to snip this wire in two that you can see, and then wire each end to the fuse, and obviously do it tidy. So it'll be wired up like that. The cable will be a bit long, that's all, but that's fine. Remember, this amp is still under testing. It's not, you know, we're going to run this up and demo it, but we're still going to be testing it, so there's no issues with that being wired that way, just for a temporary measure. We'll check these screen resistors. Let's check them. Now they are, just careful with that, they are 1K. You can't see that now because the light's shining on it. There you go. Let's see what they measure. It says 1K. Well, they're on the money. That one is anyway. Let's try the second one. And he's on the money, so he's okay. So he's okay. He's okay. And he's okay. And he's okay, so there's no reason to remove those, is there? Those were absolutely fine. Right, I've got this Carlsbro on the 4x12, and we've got just a few problems to iron out on this amp. I've put the tubes in, biased it up, so that's all done now. So just a few issues that I've got to change. So I'm going to run through those, a quick demo, and then what we're going to do is make this part one. And then in part two, we're going to come back to this amp. We're going to fix the few problems, and as I've said in part two, we're going to sort out the IEC on the back and wire all the power side of the amp up to modern day standards. So this is the Fender-esque channel that we've got going on here. So this channel has a problem. If we turn the bass up too far, and it will go up, but if the volume's up too much, this begins to motorboat. I've got it on the hot plate. Really well. Turn the volume up, you can see we just get some motorboat in there. So that's one of the problems we've got. treble works really well up there, and so does the bass. So the EQs work really well on it. The tone stack works well. If we turn this volume down, we've still got a bit of leak through, and this volume is interacting with it, and I think that's because I altered the mixer resistors, and I think they're a bit too low, so I think we're going to have to put those back to how they were. So let's have a look at the other channel now. That's a much more aggressive sound than the Fender-esque side now. It's got a lot more grunt on there, which is what we wanted on that channel. Top cut works really well, it's really bright. This is a fairly bright guitar, so with the mini humbuckers. No issues on this channel at all. So let's crank up the amp now. And we'll do that, and we'll just adjust the hot plate so we can get a little bit more threeps out of it. So we'll wind up the we'll wind up channel 2. So this is the one that's a bit hotter, the Guitarologist channel. So it's getting there, that sounds, you know, that's a nice, fairly smooth overdrive. It's got plenty of bite in there on that one, but there is just a little problem, and you can hear it more when the amp's turned up, and it's on both channels. If I play, got a bit of an overtone going on there, so we need to find out what that is on there. And it just go into the other channel, we crank that, and we have to take the bass really off there. Like. see this one's not got nowhere near the same drive. And we can't really get any depth into that because of the bass channel, the bass pot motorboat in there when we turn it up. So there we go, just so not a lot of problems really, considering, you know, how much work we've done to this amp. Just got a little, so we've got that slight overtone, and again it could be down to something to do with the mixer resistors, I don't know, so we've got to track that down. We've got volume not shutting down correctly and a bit of motorboating on there, and that's it really, that's all we've got to sort out. The amp's biased and sorted, as I've said there. So there we go. So in part 2 we're going to try and track down some of these problems that we've got, and as I say, we're going to sort out the IEC on there instead of that bulging plug. So that'll do it for this one. Bit of a long one again. Let me know in the comments what you think. Don't berate me in the comments for getting rid of the carbon comps. That was the idea of this project. All those carbon comps were shot to ribbons. I ain't replacing them with other carbon comps. I don't like carbon comp resistors, and you know, I understand that some people like them, but they're not for me. So, you know, don't berate me in the comments. I respect the fact that other people like them, and certainly if someone came to me and says, I want you to build this amp in carbon comp resistors, I'll just say, yeah, fine, because that's what you want. But with this, me and Lee have decided that that's how we've done this one with the metal films. So that'll do it for this one. So thanks for watching. You all take care, and I'll see you all in another video. Bye bye for now.